A ritual which, according to them, has stated God's will, which goes against the Supreme Court's decision of evaluating all the treasures found in the Kerala temple, including that in the 6th ward.
In June 2011, a quiet temple in southern India became the site of a historic discovery. Court orders forced open ancient vaults, locked for over 150 years. Inside were gold pots, golden chairs, jeweled crowns, and a Vishnu statue encrusted with diamonds. The treasure's value soared past $62 billion. If you found something like this in your neighborhood, would you tell the government? After opening and counting the wealth in 5 vaults, they faced the 6th, the final one, still shut. At that moment, what they believed was inside could change everything they thought they knew about it. The discovery that changed everything. That terrifying question about what guarded the final chamber consumed everyone. Yet the saga began with an unexpected legal battle in 2009. For decades, rumors of vast wealth hidden beneath the temple persisted. The local community, respecting tradition, generally left the sealed chambers alone. Everything changed when frail, 70-year-old former police officer T.P. Sundararajan broke the silence that same year. According to a detailed India Today profile, Sundararajan was deeply religious and concerned about the temple management's lack of transparency. He filed a court petition in 2009 demanding a transparent inventory of what lay beneath. This move split public opinion. Many traditionalists saw his crusade as violating sacred ground, while others felt it was time to uncover the truth. The legal battle reached the Supreme Court of India in 2011, which sanctioned an official inspection team. On June 27, 2011, the specialized team gathered at the temple gates, unaware they were about to make history. Slowly, they entered the dim underbelly of the temple to open 5 of 6 legendary vaults. When the heavy seals cracked open, the gold and jewels overwhelmed the inspectors. They stared at 400 gold chairs, 450 massive gold pots, and thousands of centuries-old coins from various empires. A solid gold statue of Vishnu stood over a meter tall, shimmering with 1,000 inlaid diamonds. Initial reports from state officials, analyzed by Time magazine, valued the hoard at $11 billion. As the inventory team catalogued diamonds, emeralds, and jeweled crowns, that estimate quickly rose to $22 billion. Later, independent assessments cited by the national news put the value at $62 billion, making it the largest treasure discovery in history. The wealth accumulated over a century and a half from donations by the Travancore royal family and wealthy devotees. If you stumbled on $62 billion hidden under your neighborhood, would you tell the government? News of the cash hit the public like a bomb. A massive fight broke out over who owned it. Politicians said the money belonged to the state for roads and schools, especially since many families nearby struggled just to get by. Local believers refused to back down. They said touching a single coin would violate the wishes of dead ancestors. In the middle of this public mess, the inspection team pushed to finish their court-ordered job. 5 vaults had already revealed their secrets, leaving the world stunned. But one vault, famously known as Vault B, never budged. No matter how hard the team tried, the massive iron mechanisms wouldn't unlock. Everyone involved started believing something far worse than a broken lock. Whispers spread. Opening it would cost them their lives. What is really inside Vault B? The vault that won't open. That terrifying rumor about a lethal curse was why Vault B's heavy iron doors stayed shut while everything else was exposed. The temple committee did not leave the room because of a rusted lock or broken key. They refused to proceed, convinced supernatural powers guarded the threshold. Times Now news found that generations of temple guardians believed breaching this vault would bring catastrophe on the region. Ancient stories warned that the immense wealth was protected by a dark hex, and touching the treasure meant swift, fatal punishment. Yet the story didn't end there. Not only folklore and fear kept inspectors at bay, but something else deepened the mystery. The priests took their fight to the courts. It turned into a mess, where modern judges clashed with ancient spiritual rules. The Supreme Court of India finally stepped in to stop the chaos. They issued a strict bench order that banned anyone from touching Vault B's lock. This ban built an invisible wall, blending real federal law with religious fear. Politicians were now blocked from forcing entry. Articles from the Times of India showed the judges understood the situation's volatility. They chose to keep the peace instead of chasing a final dollar count. Still, the High Court let the Nambis, traditional temple priests, approach the sealed area. They could continue daily spiritual rituals. These holy men continued their sacred chants right outside the threshold, keeping the religious heartbeat of the temple alive while the heavy iron door itself remained completely undisturbed. Would you open a vault if priests warned that a curse would kill you? This odd mix of spiritual fear and government paperwork kept the room sealed from the world, isolating its contents for nearly a century and a half. An archival report by the Irish Times confirmed that while the other 5 vaults surrendered their gold pots and diamond crowns to modern inventory teams, Vault B remained untouched for about 150 years. This long isolation only fueled wilder theories about what hid behind the iron wall, making the sealed room a global fascination. The curse story remained powerful, but over time, a new mystery took over the conversation. People looked past deadly hex legends and started focusing on a huge number circulating in financial circles. Independent researchers claimed Vault B alone held over $1 trillion in hidden assets. That figure didn't just dwarf the $62 billion in the other chambers, it meant enough wealth to fund Kerala's infrastructure for generations. Everyone wondered if this estimate was genuine or just the greatest speculation in treasure history. The curse narrative is powerful, but now another number circulates, one that makes 62 billion look small. Some claim Vault B alone holds over $1 trillion, enough to fund Kerala's infrastructure for decades. Is this real or the greatest speculation in treasure history? The $1 trillion claim. That mind-boggling trillion-dollar figure left the world obsessed, but a closer look at the paperwork shows the claim is flimsy. Nearly every viral video and article repeated the number as fact without verifying its origin. A dive into online history shows the rumor traces back to a single, unverified blog post from June 4, 2023 on thearchaeologist.org. This blog was not an official court document, a peer-reviewed paper, or a palace archive. Instead, the author claimed the Travancore royal family had calculated Vault B's contents at that value using current asset prices. Mainstream financial media bit even earlier. A Forbes article had amplified the same trillion-dollar claim back in 2015. If this mind-blowing estimate turned out to be completely accurate, Vault B automatically ranked as the single largest undiscovered treasure hoard in the history of human civilization. there was absolutely zero independent verification from the Supreme Court, the local Indian government, or any third-party financial auditors. While earlier reports from the national news thoroughly confirmed the $62 billion found in the other 5 rooms, nobody actually looked inside this final chamber to verify a single gram of gold. The entire trillion-dollar legend existed purely as massive financial speculation, repeated so many times across the internet that the public simply assumed it was a verified truth. If a $1 trillion vault existed underneath you, would you want it opened, even if it broke a 200-year religious rule? The intense desire to break the lock grew stronger every year because people looked at that theoretical mountain of wealth and saw a solution to every modern financial crisis in the country. Yet the heavy iron doors stayed completely silent, guarded by a perfect mix of ancient spiritual fear and modern bureaucratic red tape that kept everyone outside. But as the public debate heated up, investigators realized that the ultimate conflict over this hidden empire did not actually involve wild math or mystical curses at all. The real battle centered on a much dirtier, more complicated question about who legally owned the historic gold. People wanted to know if the mountain of cash belonged to the modern federal government, the descendants of the royal family, or the poor citizens who needed it just to survive. What is really going to happen when the pressure to claim that wealth finally breaks the system? The deity who owns $62 billion. That messy ownership question kept everyone guessing for months, but the highest court in the land eventually dropped a ruling that sounded completely wild to anyone living outside of India. Instead of splitting the cash between the state treasury and the descendants of the palace, the judges decided that neither side possessed a valid claim to the property. The Supreme Court of India officially declared that the entire $62 billion belonged exclusively to the deity himself, turning an ancient religious icon into a literal billionaire. Right along with this mind-blowing decision, the bench issued a strict command that kept the mysterious Vault B completely locked away from the public. This bizarre legal move happened because the descendants of the old palace took the fight straight to the capital to protect their ancestral heritage. According to transcripts analyzed by the Times of India, a senior advocate named K. Venugopal stood before the judges on behalf of the royal heirs and stated clearly that no human being owned a single gram of the unearthed gold. He swore that every historic crown, diamond necklace, and gold coin belonged solely to Lord Padmanabhaswamy, and the court ultimately accepted that exact argument. Here's what nobody tells you about that ruling. India's legal system actually has historical precedent for this. A concept called juridical person status has existed in Indian law for generations, originally applied to corporations and public institutions. But applying it to a divine deity, specifically to Lord Padmanabhaswamy himself, as the ultimate legal owner of physical assets worth $62 billion, was something Indian courts had never been pushed to confirm at this scale. It wasn't a technicality the judges stumbled into by accident. It was a deliberate legal architecture that the royal heirs and temple management carefully constructed over years of litigation, specifically to stop the state from ever touching a single coin. Think about what that actually means in practice. No politician can pass a bill to redirect temple funds to build highways. No bureaucrat can sign off on liquidating the gold to pay off state debt. No NGO can sue for redistribution, because the legal owner is not a person, not an institution, and not a government body. The legal owner is a god, and gods cannot be sued, removed from office, or outvoted in a parliament session. In one stroke, that ruling placed $62 billion beyond the reach of every human system built to control money. No foreign creditor can freeze it. No bankruptcy court can ever liquidate it. No inheritance dispute can touch it, because the legal owner was never born and will never die. The gold simply exists inside a legal category that most modern financial and government systems were never designed to handle. The Travancore heirs didn't just win a court case, they created a fortress no future government can legally bulldoze. Now ask yourself honestly, was that the most sophisticated wealth protection strategy in modern legal history? The palace heirs even made a direct pact with Kerala Chief Minister Oomen Chandy to lock this stance down, completely freezing out local politicians and private interests. This aggressive maneuver carved out a legal loophole that standard legal textbooks never even anticipated, essentially treating a massive pile of temple gold as a living entity with its own individual property rights. What happens to a society when ancient faith and basic human survival collide in a massive fight for the future? The curse that protects the wealth. Vault B didn't stay sealed just because of iron doors or ancient locks. It stayed sealed because the moment officials started talking about opening it, something else entered the room. Fear. Not the kind you measure in court documents, but the kind that sits quietly in decisions, in hesitation, in people suddenly choosing not to be the one who tries first. According to reporting from the Times of India, covering the temple's ongoing legal and religious discussions, the wealth inside the Sri Padmanabhaswamy temple has long been considered not just property, but a sacred belonging tied to the deity itself and the royal custodianship system that predates modern India. Here's the thing. Once that idea takes root, everything changes. Because now, this isn't just a vault anymore. It's a boundary between law and belief, and Vault B sits right in the middle of it. The Supreme Court had already authorized inspection of the temple complex, but authorization doesn't erase belief. It just forces both systems to exist in the same space. Now here's where it gets interesting. The Temple Management Committee itself sits in a strange position. On one hand, there is legal oversight and public curiosity about the scale of the wealth, especially after earlier vaults revealed assets valued in the tens of billions of dollars, according to multiple international reports, including coverage by the national news. On the other hand, there is a deep religious duty where even priests continue regular rituals and prayers inside the temple complex, but the sealed vault remains untouched, almost like a line that cannot be crossed without consequence. And get this, it's not just superstition operating alone. It becomes a structure. Law on one side, belief on the other, and in the middle, a psychological barrier that does more work than any physical lock. The Supreme Court order ensures the vault cannot be ignored, but the curse narrative ensures it cannot be rushed. Together, they form what people on the ground describe as a double lock, one legal, one cultural. So you end up with a situation where Vault B exists in a permanent state of not now, not opened, not closed in a normal sense, just suspended. And even as global media circles the story, even as estimates climb and speculation about total wealth stretches into hundreds of billions in some discussions, the physical reality doesn't change. The door stays shut. If belief alone can stop a multi-billion-dollar decision, what does that say about power in this story? Is the curse real, or is it the smartest way to protect wealth from governments that would take it? Because while scholars, officials and devotees continue to debate ownership and access, one fact remains unchanged. Vault B is still sealed, priests still perform rituals around it without opening it. And as of 2025, nothing has broken that status quo. So here's what we know, and it's almost unbelievable when you line it up. $62 billion confirmed in earlier vaults, according to multiple reports. Speculation that pushes the total far beyond that, depending on how you value historical and religious artifacts. One vault sealed by law and belief at the same time. A system where a deity is considered the rightful owner of everything inside. And India is still left with the same question hanging over all of it. When sacred wealth is this large, this old, and this protected, should it ever be touched at all? The treasure was discovered in 2011, but the real story, the one locked behind Vault B, is still unfolding. Would you open Vault B if it meant feeding millions? Or should that gold stay sacred forever? Drop your answer in the comments below.